Well, Mark, thanks ever so much for taking some time to talk to us.
It's my honor to be here with you, sir.
Ah, cheers. I guess I wanted to ask first about how the new record came about, because you have been playing with Devo again in this kind of the latest run for quite a while before the album kind of surfaced.
Yeah, you know what? We have been playing shows for about 14 or 15 years, you know. We never totally went away, and it's two sets of brothers, you know, in the band. But we you know, it wasn't our full-time gig, you know. It's like I've been mostly scoring films, and my brother Bob and Bob Casale have worked with me on that. And so we'd go out for like a couple weeks at the most a year, and it was kind of fun, you know, get to be Devo again for a little bit. And then, you know, never really took the idea of doing an album again seriously, because it was kind of like, well, you know, been there and done that, don't need to go back down that road. I didn't really find being on a record label very pleasant the first time around. And, you know, it's like we had all sorts of ideas and felt like nobody took us seriously. It's like we'd talk about, you know, even in the early days, you know, we were making these little films, and the record company's, you know, response to them were, what are we supposed to do with these? We don't know what to do with these things, you know. And it was kind of, you know, they knew exactly how things were supposed to go, and they told us, you know, they pontificated, and record companies would say, just do a hit record, don't waste your time with ideas about TV shows or cartoon shows or things like that. We're not interested. Just make a hit record, and that's all they could talk about. So, you know, when it was over, I was kind of like, felt pretty good about it. You know, I felt like, okay, we did that. Moving on. But we still came back and played shows, and kind of always loved getting a chance to do that. And it wasn't until like in the last 3 or 4 years, watching, you know, the record labels fall apart, collapse, that it made us interested in doing an album again, because it just started looking like there was a window of opportunity for things to change in pop culture and in the way people were perceiving art, you know, especially audio and art, but everything, you know, because of the internet, everything, even visual art. You know, just what art was and how art was being made and who was making it was all changing, and it seemed really kind of exciting. You know, the way it was delivered to you, you know, the idea of the internet being, you know, the main method of delivery of music, instead of, you know, like, of like wringing our hands and going, oh God, you know, what are we going to do now? Nobody's going to buy the vinyl, or nobody's going to buy the CDs. You know, it's like we were kind of thinking like, well, that means we don't have to go through record companies, and that means you don't really have to. It seems like quite an inspiring idea that fits with a lot of what Devo. That means you don't have to be in record stores. Yeah. People could have the idea that they want something, go look for it, find it, and have it. I never thought I would ever sign with a record company again. I thought, what would be the point? But, you know, all of a sudden, we went and met with a record company, you know, 6 months ago, and they're saying, we have no idea how long we're going to be around, you know. We don't, and we're trying to reinvent ourselves. And I thought, that sounds great. You know, they were asking us how we wanted to do things, what we wanted to do as a band, and I thought, well, you know what, this is very different than the first time around. And I thought, okay, I could go with this. You know, we could just do it ourselves. We could, you know, go out and look for corporate sponsorship and just do a record ourselves. And then I thought, you know what, let's use their money and let's do something different than we ever did before. And so we convinced them into letting us hire an ad agency to work with us. And Mother, the ad agency, they had this idea about a focus group, and we really liked it, you know. For us, it was interesting because one of the things that changed with Devo over the last 35 years is we went from being very protective and feeling like we had to explain to everybody what Devo was about, and they you know, people were kind of confused by our music back in the 70s. We thought rather than have to explain it to them, now people kind of understand it, you know, and as far as de-evolution is concerned, you know, things had fallen apart so much in the world that it's like, it's hard to find people that don't believe in de-evolution at this point, you know. Maybe at one time, maybe people considered Devo ahead of our time. It's like, we felt like this could be our time.
You worked with a lot of quite big names and like modern kind of like pop producers, people like Santa Gold and people like that. Was so how kind of informed like sonically by what's going on by young bands at the moment, do you think the current record is?
Well, I think, well, you know, I have to say, when we first started the record, I had this romantic notion of, let's go back to the first album and we'll get the same amps and the same guitars and we'll use the same kind of tape recorder and we'll just do like the first album all over again, you know. And we kind of, you know, messed around in that half-hearted, you know, some of the guys didn't believe in that at all. And so it was kind of like, we did it for about a month or two, and then it kind of became obvious that that wasn't really genuine Devo anyhow, because in reality, every album there was a progression of technology, and we were always paying attention to what was going on in the culture around us. The things that were intact and that were the same throughout the whole time period were the things we talked about, and the way we put our songs together. Once we kind of let go of the other idea and we just kind of did like the next album in a logical progression, you know, it became really pleasant, and the songs, I don't know, they made sense, you know. So we started writing new material and it sounded like the old stuff to us, but then we were thinking, what's changed, you know? And the thing that has changed is, instead of 35 years ago, people not understanding us, people kind of get what Devo's about now. And so we thought, well, let's find out what modern producers, what they think. When we would turn songs over to people, they started coming back and they sounded great. It was like these producers and remixers were bringing things to the mix that elevated the song so that it was more than just a series of Devo demos sounding things. They were making our stuff sound like it was compatible and would fit on modern radio. And I don't know, we all really liked that. It was like, for the first time, we felt less worried about people understanding what we were about. We felt like there was enough information out there already that we didn't have to be concerned about it. We didn't feel like we needed to explain ourselves one more time. And so, I don't know, this was such a fun process.
I remember reading that perhaps like now you seem quite open to kind of the ideas of other producers.
Yeah.
Like in the case of like working with Brian Eno, was that not really the case when you were younger bands? Was there a slight clashing of heads there? Or?
Yeah, I got to say that when we were younger, we were just so concerned and protective about the aesthetic, and we just felt nobody else got it, that you know, we didn't take full advantage of all the people that worked with us. You know, we would hire a Brian or like Roy Thomas Baker. We'd hired Roy Thomas Baker to produce, you know, our fourth album, but then we spent the whole time fighting with him, you know, to like make it sound like our demo, you know, like, and so it was kind of crazy in a way, and I think that one of the things that was fortuitous for the album was just the fact that we were able to overcome that.
That kind of preciousness about the band and its ideas seems to have served you guys really well. I mean, like conceptually, it's such a strong thing. I mean, was it like, well, you've always tried to be more than kind of just a band?
Yeah, I think it was necessary when we started off, and if we wouldn't have done that, you know, somebody that didn't understand us could have come in, and you know, we could have just been another new wave band that nobody remembers. And I think the fact that we did have such a strong vision and we had such a strong aesthetic, I think ultimately it's what gives us a legacy.
Visually, it's so kind of tightly bound together as well. Like the whole thing kind of comes as a package, doesn't it? There's films, there's the way you guys dress on stage. So.
Yeah, Jerry and I were visual artists before we were musicians. We collaborated on visual projects, and we never really. I don't think we ever thought we were going to go out on tour as Devo in the original days. We had these great ideas that we were going to be like the Akron, Ohio version of Andy Warhol's Factory, and that we'd be like this think tank that solved creative problems, and we made like agitprop theater that could go out, and there could be 4 or 5 Devos as far as we were concerned. We would put together 4 or 5 bands, and we'd dress them and create a show for them to perform and send them out there. And we had ideas that were unfortunately ahead of their time. It's like people like Richard Branson wanted to sign us for the UK, and promised he was going to help us start a film company, but he didn't really believe that, and in practice he didn't really support anything for us. He got the money and then took off.
Curse Richard Branson. I've said it before.
Richard Branson. Who would ever think of him as that?
Yeah, I'm shocked and appalled that story.
Yeah.
But you guys, you ended up making films anyway, kind of throughout your career. I guess one of the most kind of talked about is the Human Highway with Neil Young, which it seemed to me like a strange collaboration, given kind of his career at the time and the kind of music you were making. How did that come about?
In a way, we thought it was an odd combination too, and we weren't questioning it because he bought us a pair of 5 pairs of black cowboy boots, 5 cowboy hats, and
some check
matching
shirts
pants and stuff. And then he was going to trade with us film footage. If we were in his movie, he would shoot footage for one of our songs that he would let us keep. And unfortunately, he lost it's true. He lost the footage that he was supposed to give us for Shrivel Up. We never got our footage, but we did get to be in a really odd movie, as it turned out. I don't know if you ever saw it. I like him so much more now than I did then. I think he's such an interesting guy. And at the time I didn't really appreciate him as much, and it was partly because the people he surrounded himself with were like Dennis Hopper and Russ Tamblyn and Dean Stockwell. But those guys had been children actors in the 40s and 50s, who then became these like drug-addled, alcoholic, non-working, bitter actors, but yet they still got to hang around Neil, and so they were making Human Highway. And I just met him, and I just kind of thought it was really a sad scene. The first time I met Dennis Hopper, I thought he was retarded because he did so many drugs. He couldn't speak a sentence. He couldn't say a sentence complete because he was doing so many drugs at the time. And we were in a movie together, and we were in the same scenes of a film together, and he was a short order cook, and he had a knife, and he was screwing around with it, and he cut the woman who was like that lead actress in the film, Sally Kirkland. He sliced her arm open, and Neil got sued by her because, and we just thought, oh, this guy's like
extremely dangerous,
brain dead, and Dean and Russ were pretty far out there too. At the time, I didn't really appreciate that movie. I just thought these guys are just kind of sad. I thought they were all sad. But I saw the movie about 10 years ago, and I was kind of impressed with how truly weird it was, and that it did really get made. And I forgot about the Neil Young scene where Neil was playing guitar and we were singing Hey, Hey, My, My.
I've seen the footage.
And I got
so
like
bizarre.
a rubber baby mask on, sitting in a playpen with just a pair of underpants, and I'm playing a synth on my lap. And he starts crushing my playpen, and he crushes my playpen with his guitar. He was kind of, considering he was in a band called the Eagles, wasn't he in the Eagles for a little bit?
He was in
no, he was
Buffalo,
in Crosby, Stills, Nash and Young.
Yeah,
he was in that band. Yeah, he was in one of those bands there. To me, they were all the same to me, those bands, when I was a kid. I was like, they were all like yeah, forget that stuff.
Dinosaur rock
that was the dinosaur. Even in '77, I was like, dinosaur rock.
But you ended up maybe like your guys' music rubbing off on him because he did go down a kind of more synthy route at times.
Well, he was not afraid to experiment. You know, he even that movie, half of the soundtrack is from a score that I had done for a Broadway play, off-Broadway play that Dean Stockwell and Russ Tamblyn had produced of an Ionesco play, and the other half was Neil playing with a synthesizer, and it sounded kind of like Gary Newman. like if you ever listen to the film soundtrack, the soundtrack part that sounds like Gary Newman, that's Neil, and the part that sounds like Pee-wee's Playhouse, that's me.